Center Region Parks and Recreation manages 56 municipal and regional parks. These beautiful parks offer amenities such as sports fields, rentable picnic pavilions, playgrounds, bike and walking trails, and recreation facilities. Take some time to find your park and spend some time outdoors. Visit crpr.org for a list of park locations and amenities.
You're watching CNET, Center County's Government and Educational Access Network.
I would like to call to order the July 31st, 2023 regular board meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I would like to welcome everyone joining us in person this evening, as well as those who are viewing remotely. Board members, with the agenda before you, are there any changes? Seeing none, I would now like to call on the board secretary for a roll call of board members.
Dr. Anderson.
Here.
Dr. Bader.
Here.
Ms. Brandt.
Here.
Dr. Crevecore.
Here.
Dr. Duffy.
Here.
Ms. Huff.
Here.
Ms. Zidney.
All right, I'd like to start this evening with a retirement recognition. Joyce McClellan is retiring with 46 years in the district. Hired September 30th, 1976, Joyce spent her entire career with the district food services. Food Services Director Megan Shaper praised Joyce's service, saying, "Joyce joined the kitchen staff at Radio Park just in time to help students celebrate the U.S. bicentennial. She transferred to the State College Junior High, which is now Park Forest Middle School, in 1982. Through 46 years of employment, Joyce saw many changes, shared in many celebrations, worked through some challenges, and is finally taking her well-deserved retirement. Joyce always sees the best in everyone and makes the best of every situation. Part of Joyce's days include serving the entree to students as they pass through the serving line. Joyce made that same repetitive motion well over 1 million times through her career, and each interaction included her bright smile and often a kind word. Joyce easily conveyed to the students that she was glad that they were there. When Joyce let us know that she was retiring to focus on her family, she shared her intense appreciation to the district for providing her with this employment opportunity. In quiet, small ways, Joyce made the district better, and we were lucky to have had her. The board wants to thank Joyce for her service and wishes her the absolute best in retirement. All right, up next, on behalf of the Pennsylvania School Board Association, I would like to honor a few school board directors for their years of dedication to the school district. School board service has long been a crucial part of our nation's legacy and its commitment to public education. As the first school board association of the United States, PSBA has a rich history with more than 125 years of service. The consummate school directors are described as ethical, principled individuals with a deep desire to serve. They believe in the value of our public schools and local control of public education for the benefit of all students. Today, school districts are expected to offer more services along with world-class instruction with limited resources. These expectations provide a tremendous challenge for school directors, unpaid volunteers who dedicate their time to the schools and communities they serve. For almost 40 years, PSBA has been acknowledging the contributions of dedicated local school directors with long-term service. The honor roll is the association's way of thanking those individuals who exemplify leadership by giving unselfishly of their time and talents for the betterment of the public schools serving students across the Commonwealth. I am very pleased to recognize the following for being part of this rich legacy. Dr. Amy Bader, who served for 8 years. Ms. Gretchen Brandt, who's also served for 8 years. Dr. Dan Duffy, who served for 8 years. And Ms. Laurel Zidney, who served for 12 years. We thank you all for your unwavering dedication. Mr. Johnson will now provide us with his superintendent update.
All right, I would like to start off by sharing some good news. The State College Area School District ranked 14th best out of 495 school districts in Pennsylvania with an overall A+ rating in the 2023 Niche.com rankings. Nationally, we are in the top 2% of nearly 11,000 school districts. Of course, we are not going to rest on our laurels as we keep striving to improve, but it's always nice to receive a good report card. The Board Policy Committee is starting to draft a formal district policy outlining our procedures for accommodating parents who wish to opt their children out of taking district and school level surveys. The committee will meet on August 15th at 1:30 p.m. to begin discussions. At the same time, administrators are working on a new opt-out protocols to address some parent concerns that have been recently voiced. Our goal is to have these in place prior to administering any survey this school year. Next, the Penn State School of Music has selected Mount Nittany Middle School orchestra teacher Matt Schaefer to be the recipient of the 2022-2023 Outstanding Music Education Alumni Award. Congratulations, Matt. As we draw closer to the new school year, I would like to let the families know that schools will provide free breakfast to all students during the school year. From the start of the year, schools also will not charge for lunch for reduced eligible families, with the state funding the copay. After the current state budget impasse has been resolved, the state will provide us with earned reimbursements for the reduced lunch copays. Application for reduced price meals can be found in the food services sections of our website, as well as general food services information. So that's it for my.
All right, thanks, Mr. Johnson. I understand there are no student updates at this time, so we'll move on to a few legislative items to update everyone on. The Pennsylvania Ledge has been in recess, but it's worth noting that discussions around vouchers continue after Governor Shapiro promised to line item veto the past scholarships from the 23-24 annual budget. As a result of this promise, the Senate adjourned before the budget went through its formal finalization that requires a signature from the Senate pro tempore, and thus the budget has yet to be adopted. Mr. Johnson actually just referred to this in his update. Consequently, some payments to Education and Human Services were not paid out in July as a result of the impasse. Senate pro tempore Kim Ward has said that she will reconvene the Senate at some point in August and that there will not be an extended budget delay. She added through a spokesperson that the quickest way forward would be for the governor to sign the budget as passed without the line item veto included. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens. Next up, we have a COG report. Gretchen, is there any update from the COG?
Yes, I have a quick update. Not from the general forum because they're meeting right now. So that'll be for the next COG update. But I did attend last week a 3-hour-long retreat for the Parks Authority and pertaining to the governance structure of CRPR and the authority and the general forum and what that framework should look like. This was a recommendation from the comprehensive study that was done through CRPR a few years ago. This was one of the recommendations, was looking at this governance structure. And so we spent about 3 hours, and one of the exercises that I wanted to just mention to the school district that I thought was particularly creative and informative is that we all did some role playing where we put on the hat of a position we do not have. So, for example, the CRPR director, a parks user, an authority member, an elected official in the general forum, and it really gave you a better idea of what others are trying to achieve and what their goals are and what it looks like from a different perspective. And just in terms of borrowing that perhaps one day in something that we might want to do, I thought that was particularly useful. Overall, I just wanted to point out two sort of bullet points that stuck out in my mind, which is that this is all stemming from Whitehall Road Park project, that there were some kerfuffles with that. And one of the things that really stuck out with me is that the Parks Authority really should prioritize the allocation of funds, but not necessarily the solicitation of funds. And those have been blurred in documents and in conversations in committee meetings. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is that the SCASD really uses our comprehensive plan, our strategic plan, really well. I hear people referring to it, board members, all the time. And I don't hear that a lot in some other venues throughout local government in the center region. And when that document is given prioritization and credibility, it really steers the ship in the right direction. And so that is something that I have been sharing with the Parks Authority and CRPR and the COG, that is very helpful in the school district. And again, the whole point of the COG liaison is that we can learn from them, they can learn from us, and there's open communication flowing both directions. And so that's also been really helpful, I think, for their perspective to see us doing that in a very linear and constructive way, and how that really helps us achieve our goals step by step. So anyway, I thought I would share that, and we will be meeting again to figure out this new governance structure, but it is transparent and constructive, and different local government entities are learning and borrowing from each other to make our community better. So that's my COG report.
All right, thank you so much. All right, at this time, we will have public comment. We are providing an opportunity at this point in the agenda for those who wish to make a comment and not stay for the entire meeting. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes. For action items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item as required by the Sunshine Act. If additional time is necessary, the board may consider reopening public comment after board business is completed or during the next meeting. As a reminder, public comment is a chance for the community members to share their thoughts with the board. It is not a time for the board to answer questions or engage in conversations. You can always email the board at all-board@scasd.org. Is there anyone in person who would like to make a public comment this evening? Please. If you would come to the podium and state your name for the record, and then you may have your comment.
Sure. Hi, I'm Mary Morningstar. I have kids that attend the school district. I would just like to say thank you so much for taking up the issue that I brought to your attention last time pertaining to the survey process. You know, those of us who have been writing you about it, we're very, very happy to see that it's moving ahead, and very excited to see that you're not going to administer any surveys until the process is complete. So I would just like to say thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Please, if you'd like to come to the podium.
Yeah, just want to warn you, I'm part of a group of about 5 or 6 people. A couple of them are on Zoom. So, esteemed school board members, my name is Ming Tian. I was a volunteer assistant coach for the girls and boys tennis team for 4 years. I'm here to report on what I've observed during these 4 years and to shine light on the troubling culture of the tennis program, and in my opinion, the lack of oversight from the athletic department. I'm also requesting more transparency in matters involving both. I've outlined many of these concerns in an email to Ms. Huff. I resigned as a tennis coach in November of 2022 after a coaches meeting where head coach Jane Borden accused Rob Taz and I of causing player injury due to our extra practices. She never once asked us about the details of these practices. We were simply going to be monitored by her because of these putative increases in injuries. She was also not pleased with us in that we disagreed on how she handled the challenge match system and the lineup of the team. Relevant here is how she attempted to replace a player in the singles lineup with a player that this player had already beaten in a challenge match. This is called stacking. Rob Taz and I supported this player in the name of fair play. At that time, we did not even know that this was against Mid-Penn League rules. After resigning, I decided to report on additional violations. Christine Merritt and Chris Weaker were in charge of the investigations. In addition to manipulating the lineup, I discovered that she was using the tennis courts for profit without any payment to the school systems. Others that use the courts for profit have to pay $29.95 per hour per court. Chris Leakin was aware of this. She was supposed to donate to the Booster Club, which she said she did, but she never had. She was also giving lessons to the players in season for profit, which is also against school rules. Rob had nothing to do with these complaints. I'm the one that spearheaded them. He wanted to stay on as an assistant coach. As such, he did not want to aggravate his relationship with Coach Borden. 8 months later, to this day, I'm not aware of the consequences, if any, negative consequences to Coach Borden. However, Rob, and this is why I'm here, was fired by the AD and Jane Borden on July 8th. He even asked to stay on as a volunteer coach without pay. He was denied that. I'm here today to express my concerns over such a matter. Rob was an unpaid assistant coach for 4 years, and he volunteered as a coach for a total of 6 years. He also spends extra time with the kids in the summertime and in the winter. In the summertime, he runs free practices, drilling, at the high school courts for approximately 2 hours per day, 5-6 days a week. In the wintertime, we go to Reedsville twice a week, 2 hours each time, to work with the kids. This is in the off season. Weekland and Merritt told one of the parents that us going to Reedsville was illegal. However, they never informed us of that. We've never had a chance to defend ourselves. Also, Coach Borden was totally aware of these off-season practices in Reedsville and actually went to Reedsville with us 2 years ago. Rob does all this stuff for his love for coaching, and it's all free.
Mr.
The
Tian.
reason given to Rob on why he was fired was that
I'm so sorry, Mr. Tian. Your 3 minutes is up.
Okay, can I just say one more sentence?
Sure.
Okay, so I just think Rob deserves much better than this. I see his firing as retaliation. All right, he dared to stand up for what was right and for the kids. We have a couple people on Zoom also.
I appreciate that. We'll do all the in-person comments first, and then we'll move to Zoom.
Okay, all right.
Okay. All right.
Hi, my name is Madeline Miller, and I graduated from State High in 2022 after being on the girls' tennis team for 4 years and knowing Coach Rob for that period of time as well. So I just want to start by saying during my time on the team, Coach Rob truly embodied the role of a supportive and inclusive coach. And I have the perspective of someone who spent time on junior varsity, both as quite literally the worst player on the team and as someone who improved enough to play singles on varsity. Coach Rob, for me, played a huge role in that transition, no matter where I was on the lineup, and he always consistently motivated me to work hard. So when I was a freshman, I had little to no tennis experience prior to joining the team, and because of that, court time was always very difficult to come by. There were always matches where there would be no opponent left for me to play, and so I had really no chance to improve. However, Coach Rob took it upon himself to make sure that I was always given an opportunity to play, and he took me very seriously when I told him that I wanted to improve. He was always there putting in countless extra hours to help me drill after practice, and because of this, I was able to improve so much. He's a huge part of why I greatly value hard work, sportsmanship, and leadership in everything that I do. Coach Rob has truly heightened my growth as both an athlete and as a person. Coach Rob really only adds to the value of the tennis team at State High, and I truly could not imagine the same experience that I had without him there as a mentor and as a support system. He cares about and values every single team member, no matter what their skill level, and his dedication is so clearly evident throughout everything that he does. His involvement truly enriches the athleticism, spirit, and commitment of the entire team. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Welcome. If you would please state your name for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm Allison Norloff. I just graduated in 2023, and I was on the State High girls tennis team for all 4 years at State High. And I just want to say that I knew Rob the whole time, and he was so helpful and so kind, and is truly one of the nicest people I've ever met. He helped me improve my tennis so much, and he was always there to support me and help me, and was undoubtedly like the biggest impact that I had through high school, and he helped me all the time. And I had my Gold Award project, which is like an Eagle Scout but for Girl Scouts, and when I asked him if he could be my project advisor, he instantly said yes, no hesitation, and devoted countless hours to helping me perfect my project and ultimately run a successful free 4-day tennis camp for State College area youth. And he was just such a positive mentor for anybody that he interacted with. and was a really great coach and a big part of the tennis team. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Good evening. If you'd just state your name for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Sam Steele. I live in Park Forest Village, and I'm here this evening on behalf of my 2 daughters who have both graduated from State College Area High School. Shannon graduated in 2017. Kelly graduated this year, and both of them played on the varsity tennis team. So I would think that I'm really here this evening as kind of a character witness for Coach Rob. I interacted with Coach quite a bit because I tried to attend every match that I could for both my daughters. And I found he had 3 phenomenal qualities as a coach of the girls' tennis team. Very patient, which you have to be as a coach in any athletic endeavor at the high school level. Very knowledgeable about tennis, and also he was very dedicated. And when parents, other parents who are here and other parents were looking for an opportunity during the winter months, he was always out there looking for opportunities because we don't live in a climate or a region where you can play tennis year-round. So I'm just here to support Rob, and I'm kind of sad that he won't be any longer a part of the coaching for the State College Area State High girls tennis team. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, my name is David Norloff. Allison's my daughter. Thank you for your time. I'd like to also speak on behalf of Coach Tawes. He has been such an inspirational teacher, is the best term to use, as a coach. My daughter improved tremendously, but that was really only a part of it. I mean, he supported her in her tennis endeavors. He always was there with positive comments. I thought he's like the Ted Lasso of tennis, but he actually knows the game of tennis. So I think that I can't say enough kind words about Rob. You heard my daughter allude to the fact that he was an enthusiastic supporter of her Gold Award project, which was a significant time commitment for him. And what we did not know as a family is that the Girl Scouts reached out to Rob and requested a video prior to the Mid-Atlantic event celebrating the Girl Scouts, and his video was so touching and so heartfelt that, again, out of a large number of Girl Scouts, his was one of the few videos they selected. So that gives you some indication about what kind of person he is. I think you'll struggle to find any parent that had interactions with Rob say a negative word about him. I do believe his dismissal was unjust. I would encourage people to ask questions, and when you're told answers, look up the details. I really I think it's a huge loss for the tennis team, and I think it's the players are really going to be the ones that lose out the most. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your comment. Hello. Good
Hi.
evening.
My name is Karina Curto. I'm also here as a parent supporting Rob Tawes. I have 2 boys who play tennis here in State College. One of them has been on the tennis team, on the boys' tennis team for 2 years now. And the younger one is 12, but has also worked with Rob in the context of tennis camps and so on. Rob has been just an incredible presence in the tennis community here. I've known him for almost 9 years, ever since I moved to State College, because I'm a tennis player as well. And the kind of commitment that he has to helping kids improve, helping kids play tennis, being a coach is really remarkable. I have seen few people who are as generous and kind, and he really seems to have a perfect record. Like, I really say perfect as a mathematician here. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about him, and the kids love him. All the kids absolutely love him. He's just consistently kind, positive, generous, and knowledgeable, and gives them real tips that help them improve. So I just want to say I was very surprised, somewhat shocked to hear that he had been fired. I know that he wants to keep coaching, and I'm sorry to say that firing Rob sends a message to the community and to the kids also on the team. And it's not a good message. It's a message that if you speak up or have a disagreement, no matter how good of a person you are and how respectful and kind and polite you are, you're still subject to retaliation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Good evening.
Hi. Peggy Duffy. So I just want to start by thanking you guys for your time this evening. I've known Rob Taz for a few years as the United States Tennis Association, or USTA, representative for State College. And I first met Rob a few years ago on a Zoom call where he really wanted to work with me to establish junior team tennis. And since that time, I've had the opportunity to work with him to support the growth of junior team tennis in State College. He's donated his time and expertise to create the first USTA competitive junior team tennis in State College in 20 years. One thing that is really apparent when you see Rob on the court is that he's in his element. His element is coaching, mentoring, and teaching. As a coach, he's patient and kind to his students, and he creates a space for all athletes to have an opportunity to really take risks and grow. As a mentor and a teacher, he models and instructs sportsmanship, dedication to the sport, perseverance when things get hard, because learning how to play tennis is not easy. And he teaches them how to be empowered as juniors in this community. In addition to supporting the high school, Rob has donated his time to USTA junior team tennis, junior practices, and when he's not doing that, he's volunteering for Special Olympics Pennsylvania for tennis, and he's also part of the Center Region Community Tennis Association. Further, in the spirit of creating equity for children in this community, he offers and teaches and instructs them free of charge. When you are on a court with Rob, it is pure joy. As an educator, I understand the difficulty of finding highly qualified professionals to work and teach. And in my 20 years of experience, I've found it almost impossible to find volunteers who possess the skills and passion that Rob has for teaching tennis. It seems it would be a detriment to a growing and thriving tennis community to have a system where Rob is not assistant coach, either paid or as a volunteer. He's bonded to the juniors in the community. He's known for his patience, his willingness to help families and children. The students recently bought him a t-shirt that said tennis coach, more than a job. Many in this community love and respect Rob. I believe his connection to the community shows his dedication to the sport and to young athletes, teaching the love of the game. Playing tennis promotes health, and it gets kids outside doing something active. As a parent, I would definitely rather see my kids doing something active and social, and as a tennis player, I could play tennis every single day. In closing, we really hope that the board might take a moment to find a resolution that results in the reinstatement of Rob Taz as an assistant coach, paid or volunteer, so he can continue to kind of go with his purpose and support a growing tennis community here in State College. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else here tonight who would like to make a public comment? Please, if you'd come to the podium, state your name for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jason Narber. I have 3 sons. One just graduated from State High, and my 2 other ones, one's going to be a 9th grader, and my youngest will be 7th grade. One of my sons does receive special education services in the district. As I review some of the equity and inclusion audits that have recently, and the reports that just came out, one of my concerns that I have as a parent is that when we look at those numbers, one of the things that's being excluded in that is the disproportionality of discipline to students with IEPs. The latest U.S. Department of Education statistics that were reported by State College, which was 2017, 40% of the out-of-school suspensions were given to students with proportionality-wise, they only make up less than 12% of the student population at that point. So one of the things that I think is important to look at with that is how that discipline is given, and maybe look at some of the behavioral plans that are put in place instead of looking at the students sometimes, because the efficacy of those plans sometimes is not the best. And even when parents bring that up and request new FBAs to be done, it's not happening. on that same note, as I look through some of the other stuff that's happening in the district, I actually wrote all of you an email about a month ago regarding special education audit that's coming up that the district contracted with Global Special Education Associates. And I brought up, my concern was that the owner of that company was fired from his job in 2019 for making disparaging comments online about people with disabilities. When he posted a meme that said Donald Trump is the first special needs president. I take that to heart. When we're looking at how we treat some of these students and just this population in general, when you have a man who has supposedly served this community of special needs for his life and felt that it was acceptable to post that, how are we as a district hiring a company that is the case? And now that I made you aware, if you weren't aware prior to that, how do we accept that? And how do we tell our kids that, you know, this guy made these comments, it's okay for him to do it? It's not. And for us to move forward with that, I think is rather unfortunate. So I'm going to ask that you reevaluate that again and take a look at it, because personally, it's just not okay. And we need to do better. So I thank you for your service that you do provide, but I do think that that's something that you do need to reevaluate. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there any, if you'd like to approach the podium, if you just state your name for the record, and you'll have your 3 minutes.
My name is Megan Lang. This is my 4th time here to bring something that's near to my heart. The last meeting, I asked all of you what you plan to do with the obscene materials that are available to our students, our minors. I didn't receive any emails, I didn't receive any phone calls, and no letters. I thought it was your job to respond to your constituents, because I've watched you respond to other ones who have stood at this podium as well. Let me remind you that the federal law USC Title 18, Section 1470 prohibits the transfer of obscene materials to minors. It's punishable by fines and imprisonment not more than 10 years, or both. I have an excerpt that I want to read today. So I'm going to warn parents with minors who may be present that you would take precautions. The excerpt today is dedicated to people like the school board candidate who said on the Tor Michaels show, that all boys aren't blue is not appropriate for an 11-year-old, his daughter, but it was okay for high schoolers. By saying that, this person was basically presuming authority as a parent just by making that statement. So I would like to know if he would deem this appropriate for her, because it is now available not in the high school, but also in the Mount Nittany and the Park Forest middle schools. It's by, here's the book. It's called Kingdom of Ash by Sarah Maas. Dorian kissed her again, and her tongue met his, hungry and searching. Then her hands were plunging into his hair, both of them rising on their knees to meet halfway. She moaned, her hands sliding from her hair down to his chest, down his pants. She stroked him through the material, and Dorian groaned into her mouth. Time spun out, and there was only Manon, a living blade in his arms. Their pants joined their shirts and jackets on the ground, and then he was laying her upon his bedroll. Manon reached for him, fingers digging into his shoulders, and Dorian rose over her, finding her mouth in a plundering kiss. A shift of her hips and he was buried, the heated silk of her enough to make him forget that they had a camp around them or kingdoms to protect. He did not bother with phantom touches. He wanted her all to himself, skin to skin. Every thrust into her, Manon answered with a rolling, demanding movement of her own. Stay. The word echoed into each breath. Dorian took one of her legs and hefted it higher, angling him closer. He groaned at the perfection of it, and Manon swallowed the sound with a kiss of her own.
Ms. Liang, that's 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, today, I just want to say that I'm asking right now. If you didn't understand my ask before, I would like full transparency of these books. I would like you to remove the password on Follett, and I would like you to allow participation in a discourse with your constituents who don't necessarily feel the way that some of the others feel. And I'm going to give my business card to the secretary here so that you have no excuse to not respond to me.
Good evening. If you'd state your name for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Michelle Shelberg. At the school board meeting at the end of June, Peter Buck was allowed to give his personal reasons why he broke SCASD policy and why he would do again, given the opportunity. So I want to give my personal story as to why his releasing the video of Megan Lang entering the school has a personal effect on me and my family. My daughter, who is a SCASD high student, has a medical disability that often lands her inside after school with the medical person helping her with her medical issues. Kristen was in the building when Megan entered the building back in April. I want to read the headlines. State College School Board candidate escorted out of State High after entering without permission. A State College area school board candidate was escorted by security from the State High building in April for entering without authorization during after-school hours, according to multiple sources with knowledge of the incident. Candidate Megan Lang and her husband Ken were identified as the 2 individuals who entered the building at 5:30 on April 10th, when my daughter was in the building. Current board member Peter Buck said Superintendent Curtis Johnson sent an email to school board members asking for help identifying the individuals. Surveillance video showed a man and a woman entering through a door at the back of the building. Johnson told the board that they went into the library and photographed books before a staff member approached them and notified security, who escorted them out of the building. The door, which did not have a no trespassing or similar sign, was unlocked at the time because of after-school tutoring and other activities. School district spokesman Chris Rosenblum, who did not identify the individuals involved, said no police report was filed. After our investigation with the assistance of our high school resource officer, we do not believe that the individuals entered with any violent intent and/or with an intent to harm any student, staff member, or others. However, as with any security incident, we are reviewing our protocols and procedures for after-hours security to see if there are any areas in need of improvement. Later, only a couple weeks, there's another headline. PA man charged with attacking teen with a machete reports. I'm going to skip through because I'm running out of time. Authorities arrived at the scene of Parkway Plaza Apartments at 1 a.m. Monday due to a call of a 16-year-old boy that was stabbed in one of the apartments. The teen told officers that he was with 2 other juveniles and that he had been assaulted by a man later identified as 18-year-old Emmanuel. The teen and 2 other juveniles were reportedly hanging out inside the apartment. The teen stepped out into the balcony. When he went back inside, the suspect punched the victim in the face, knocking him to the ground. He also continued striking the victim, yelling, "You set me up to get robbed." After a few strikes, it suddenly dawned on the victim that suspect was hitting him with a machete. The victim suffered from multiple lacerations, including a 6-inch cut to the shoulder blade and wounds to his arm and ankle. Parkway Plaza is the apartment complex that is next to the high school soccer field. This whole situation,
Michelle Berg, I'm so sorry, but it's been 3
is
minutes.
about safety and keeping our kids safe, not about innocent parents walking to a school building. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who would like to make a public comment this evening? All right, is there anyone online that would be interested in making a public comment this evening? All you have to do is raise your hand by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I do see one. I want to recognize Kiana Go. And if you would state your name again so I could say it correctly the next time, I'd appreciate it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. My name is Kiana Guo. I am a recent graduate and former captain of the State High Girls Tennis team. I have a total of 7 district titles and finished as a state. However, these titles and records are not what make the team my second home. It has been each and every one of my teammates, our memories, and
Kiana? You're
especially
cutting.
the coaches.
I'm so
who
sorry,
work
Kiana.
with us to create such a unique environment. Hearing that coach.
Kiana, can you hear me? Yeah, so I'm so sorry, Kiana. We're having a lot of trouble hearing you. If you're
I'm here today to inform you.
and apparently you're having trouble hearing me. I'm so sorry. You're cutting in and out. I think I have a statement from you in my email, and I'd be happy to share that with the board since we're having some technical difficulties. Otherwise, you'd be more than welcome to also email us at all-board@scasd.org. I'll try to reach out to you too and hear what your concerns are, or if you'd like to log off, log on, and try again after our next public comment, you'd be more than welcome to. I apologize. I also see that Mr. Terry Watson has his hand raised. I'd like to recognize you. Terry, you can go ahead. I think we can hear you. Can you say it one more time?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hi, my name is Terry Watson. I have a son who graduated from State High in 2022 and a daughter who is currently in State High. The reason why I'm asking to be recognized right now is in regards to the conversation around books in school and what should be allowed and what should not be allowed. Although I do agree with the lady regarding having the civil discourse, there's one thing I'd like to remind folks at this board. One is that we cannot infringe on our First Amendment rights. And so one of the things I want to state here is, as part of any type of interaction or civil engagement around books in a school, the ultimate responsibility relies on the parents themselves. So if you do not want your child to read a certain book, I think the one thing we should do is have those conversations with our kids about the contents of the books themselves. The other part, I wanted to just take a minute here just to remind folks about the First Amendment itself. And as the First Amendment guarantees freedoms concerning religion, expression, assembly, and a right to petition. And again, one of the clause of that First Amendment is Congress should not make no laws respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for regardless of grievances. So I just want to take that moment to recognize that even though there may be some books that I disagree with in the school, I do support the idea that we acknowledge that First Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Is there anyone else online or in person who'd like to make public comment tonight? Please. If you'd state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Ken Lang from State College. I just want to address the comments of the most recent speaker. The First Amendment restricts the government's ability to restrict speech. It's an important distinction to make, and I want to flip the script on what I've been hearing from a lot of people on the other side of this issue. We're paying for these books with taxpayer dollars, And what is being alleged is that that is an inappropriate use of taxpayer dollars and a violation of federal law. I want to flip the script and suggest that if parents who support this kind of material want that material for their children, it is incumbent upon them to spend their own money and provide that material for their kids on their own dime, not on mine.
All right, I see we have another speaker approaching the podium. If you'd please state your name for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Chico, thank you. I'd like to address both Mr. Watson's comment, which I applaud for him for speaking out and supporting civil discourse and the right of parents to decide what their children are reading. As far as I know, both of my children have either been in the school district or one of them has left. I don't believe that either one of them were forced to read the book that Ms. Lang, has presented. I don't believe that any child in the school district is forced to read any book that parents don't feel is appropriate for their children. So if that is not the case, I wasn't aware of that. So I am in favor of having books such as those in our library for the children and whose parents are fine with them reading those materials. And I don't think it's up to any person to decide that we are not allowed to have any certain book in the library, and also that, again, it is not to my knowledge that any child in the school district is required to read these books that they have an opposition to. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone in person or online who would like to make a public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Next on the agenda, we have routine approvals. Is there a motion to approve the routine approval listing as presented on the agenda?
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion?
I do have a question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Krevkor.
Thank you. It was just a minor question on 5C, out-of-state night travel. When at the bottom, when they talk about the bus expenses, are they talking about the district costs? That confused me. Is the district cost part of the bus expenses?
Give us a minute.
I'm sorry. I wish I emailed it early. I'm sorry for that question.
We should be able to, I think we should be able to answer that.
Because if so, the thing is that if it's going to be shared and hopefully equally, because that wasn't said, between 9 school districts, then the cost would really be $167 per school district. So I'm not sure what the district costs and the bus expenses, or if there's something else that wasn't listed.
I have no idea, but just from my time helping with field trips in the past, and I have to think bus costs have only increased, I have to assume that that is our share is what's listed. Like the thought of getting a charter bus from State College to Indiana for $1,500, like that would be an insanely good deal, I think. I could be wrong. Someone that knows better maybe could answer that, but I would expect it to be at least $5,000 or $6,000 to go that distance.
See, I don't know if the district cost is something in addition to the bus expenses. I don't know if the bus expenses was even listed.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's my question.
Yeah. I have no idea.
The district cost is all our costs. So it's the cost for person to drive, and it doesn't, I don't think this is actual bus. I think they're going to rent a van or or someone's driving.
Yeah, because we only have 4 students. That's another thing I was saying.
It's
is
not
it
a bus? It's just the amount of money for travel, mileage, that sort of thing, all that, or renting a van to take the kids to do this.
So is that our portion, or is that divided
That
by
is
9?
No, that's our total portion for all the kids. So for 4 kids, it'll be, the district's cost will be $1,500.
I see. Okay.
Okay. And
What-
the students are contributing the $750.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussion for the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney? Yes. Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Moving on to action items, agenda item 6A is a motion to approve a new math resource for intervention classes as shown in attachment 6A.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussions on this item? Ms. Zidney?
We discussed it last time. My only question is, or comment is for the future, it really would be nice to have the contracts attached to these so that we can look at them with looking at the item. So I would really appreciate that.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Agenda item 6B is a motion to approve a Penn State research proposal with Dr. David McNaughton. This is shown in attachment 6B.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Public comment.
Oh, thank you. Is there any public comment on this action item? All right, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes. Agenda item 6C is a motion to approve another Penn State research proposal with Dr. Ashley Patterson. This is shown in attachment 6C.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? We'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Agenda item 6D is a motion to approve an agreement with Colonial Press for print shop management. This is shown in attachment 6D.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? We'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney? Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Agenda item 6E is a motion to approve an agreement with Quadient for postage meter lease. This is shown in attachment 6E.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on this action item? Is there any public comment? We'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Agenda item 6F is a motion to approve an agreement with Singer and Websterant for purchase of kitchen. This is shown in attachment 6F.
So moved. Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? We will have a roll call vote.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney? Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Motion passes. Agenda item 6G is a motion to approve an agreement with Singer for purchase of food service heated holding cabinets. This is shown in attachment 6G.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? We'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney? Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Agenda item 6H is a motion to approve an agreement with AmTab Incorporated for the purchase of cafeteria tables. This is shown in in attachment 6H.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney? Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Motion passes. Agenda item 6I is a motion to approve policy 218, student discipline. This is shown in attachment 6I.
So moved. Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Ms. Zidney. And hello, Ms. Pierce. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. With respect to this, one of the questions that I'm wondering about is when it is, and it goes to all our policies actually, when are they enforced? So we have a school year that goes from first day of school to the last day of school. What about the summers or school holidays? Is this still applicable during those times?
Is this applicable when the students are not in a district facility? Is that what you're asking?
Right, but it specifically talks about out of school as well, and that's why I'm wondering.
The discussion about out of school is that it would affect the students if the action that happened out of school interfered, caused a commotion.
So if
Within
it
the
causes a
school.
severe disruption within the school,
Right.
then yes.
So if it happens out of school in July, there is no disruption within school. Now, if the new school's year starts and there's still something going on because of whatever it is that happened in July, then we'd have to assess it at that point.
Okay, thanks. That's, I appreciate the answer.
Any other questions or comments on this action item? Is there any public comment on this action item? You can come make a comment. Thank you.
How do you judge that? Who gets to make the judgment on whether something, say my kid comes in September and says, well, Joey said something sexual about me in July, and it's on Facebook. Okay, I'm old, so it's on Facebook. Like, which one of you gets to decide when it becomes relevant and not, and a decision that has anything to do with SCASD?
I would say it starts at the building level with the building principals making the initial decision, and then it works its way up the chain to have the assistant superintendents and the superintendent make the decision. But these are all very fact-specific. It's difficult, I think we said this a couple meetings ago when we're talking about policies of this nature, to have a full and comprehensive list that's going to address every factual scenario that arises. So unfortunately, in a district of our size, we have these things happen, and certainly Mr. Johnson, for the length of time that he served as a high school principal, he would have a pretty good catalog in his head about what's going to matter and what's not going to matter. But
Can you point to a policy or a code number that we can look at?
I don't know that a policy or code. There are certainly cases where families have not necessarily in this district, but in districts in Pennsylvania or across the United States, where there would be challenges to what's making a difference. More recently, there was a federal court case within the last 24 months in Mifflin County, a neighboring school district, where children on opposite sides of the political spectrum had an altercation and whether the student could be disciplined or not. So there are cases that we would look to make a decision and help to guide
So
us.
in that case, there was a political discussion or confrontation outside of the school?
No, that one was in the school itself, and whether or not the school could discipline a child for an expressive act.
But that happened you're saying in the school. I'm thinking like if that happened in July
And
at somebody's home and it came apparent.
What's that?
To clarify, and I'm going to talk about a specific type of behavior, not all the behaviors. Title IX addresses that. Title IX says if there is a sexual assault off of school property outside of school time, then it's not covered by Title IX unless the results of that action are brought into the school. And your question is, who makes that decision? And there's a group of administrators who do an investigation, find out what happened, and make a decision.
So there's no specific policy that could help us look into.
103.1, 103.2.
So this is pretty far outside public comment, so I'd be happy to talk with you offline about this if you want
Great,
to.
thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments on this item?
Question.
Ms. Zinni?
Will there be regulations attached to this once it's approved? Or is it not something that we've had regulations on?
No, is the code of conduct.
That becomes in effect okay, thanks.
All right, is there any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Zinni?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes. Agenda item 6J is a motion to approve policy 218-3, discipline of student convicted adjudicator of sexual assault. This is shown in attachment 6J.
So moved. Second.
Are there any questions or discussions on this item?
I would like to offer one comment.
Sure.
During the time when we presented this for information discussion, there was a question asked. I typed the question into our Google Doc, which I shouldn't have. I should have made a comment. That question was investigated. It was decided that the answer to the question was no. Unfortunately, the question was never deleted. So at the top of page 2, you'll see PA law for ramifications who does not report conviction of a sexual assault. That will be deleted. Whether you approve it or not, we'll delete it.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions or discussion on this item? Ms. Zidney?
The policy I'm fine with. I wish that it went even further and made some provision that if there is a student who is a victim of such an assault, we would be guaranteeing that the district would cover any transportation expenses or such if the victim wished to go to a different building. So that would be an add-on. It's just a comment. I made it at the policy committee too. It's not an objection to the policy, but I think we could go further by encoding that in our policies.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Motion passes. Agenda item 6K is a motion to approve policy 221, attire standards. This is shown in attachment 6K.
So moved. Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Ms. Zidney?
Yeah, this one actually I do have a concern about the policy. The way it's written, it looks to me like it lists what's acceptable, but it doesn't say that the things that are acceptable are required. So it says that it is acceptable. This is the regulations, not the policy, and I realize that we approve the policy. But the regulations affect how the policy is enforced, and the regulations talk about what's approved and not approved, and the things that are approved are things like wearing a shirt and pants or the equivalent. And I think those things we actually need to make very clear are required, not just acceptable. The other question I had about it, and this is a question, I guess, for Mr. Johnson in terms of the policy, is it talks about private parts, and I was wondering if there is a specific definition of private parts. In particular, do boys and girls have different private parts?
Yes, but we know what the private parts are. So I don't think we have to list the private parts to know
Well, I'm
that they're
specifically
private.
asking about bottom parts are different, but analogous.
Yeah, but they're private. So,
Right,
I
but
mean,
what about their torsos or tops?
So that comment is also in the regulations, correct?
I didn't think that it was. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't think it was addressed.
But we're not referencing the regulations. we're
Hence the
referencing
reason I brought it
the
up.
policy.
Yeah.
Yes, how we enforce, or it says something about how the policy itself will be handled, and that's why I was wondering.
Are there any other questions or discussion on this item? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Agenda item 6L is a motion to approve policy 342 jury duty. This is shown in attachment 6L.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Motion passes. Agenda item 6M is a motion to approve policy 343 paid holidays. This is shown in attachment 6M.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Motion carries. Agenda item 6N is a motion to approve policy 347 workers' compensation transitional return to work program. This is shown in attachment 6N.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? I'm sorry, questions or discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Motion carries. Agenda item 6O is a motion to approve the retirement of policy 211 student accident insurance. This is shown in attachment 6O.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Huff?
Yes.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Motion carries. Agenda item 6P is a motion to approve North Boilers and Air Handling Unit Replacement Change Order. This is shown in attachment 6P.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Are there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Zidney?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Bader?
Yes.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Duffy?
Yes.
Ms. Huff?
Yes. Agenda item 6Q is a motion to approve a Memorial Field turf replacement change order. This is shown in attachment 6Q.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Ms. Zidney?
I'm impressed that they are helping split the cost of this. So thanks for working on that. I assume somebody had to ask.
This is one of those acts of God.
Yes, but it's nice not
It
to
is.
have to pay for the whole act.
We've had some heavy rains and heavy showers in the afternoons, and it's been tough.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Ms. Huff.
Yes.
Ms. Zidney.
Yes.
Motion carries. Agenda item 6R is a motion to approve Park Forest Elementary equipment storage. This is shown in attachment 6R.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Ms. Huff.
Yes.
Ms. Zidney.
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Agenda item 6S is a motion to approve HVAC district-wide duct cleaning. This is shown in attachment 6S.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Ms. Huff.
Yes.
Ms. Zidney.
Yes.
Dr. Anderson.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to information discussion items. Ms. Jean Knaus is with us remotely and will review a proposal for a licensed social work for the Reclaiming Individual Talent program.
Yes, thank you. At the last board meeting, we discussed the mental health supports in the school district, and I said I would probably be bringing back a plan moving forward for our RIGHT program. And what was discussed was actually hiring a social worker for that program and redistributing our mental health clinicians and social workers in other places within the district. With the loss of Mike Wolf at the middle level, this allows for us some flexibility to align differently with different positions within the district. And what this position would allow also is there's been several cases throughout the school year where we've had individuals who needed the all-day social work, mental health kind of support within the program, and this would allow for that to happen instead of sending those students to outside placements because the RIGHT program didn't provide that. So it's a way to put to provide our highest need students with a higher level of support. So if you have any questions or anything I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
Are there any questions or, yes, go ahead, Dr. Duffy.
Hi, Jean. Thank you for filling us in on this. I'm reminded of an earlier request. This is a financial request that we had for services to serve a student outside of RIGHT. As I recall, the concern about this student had to do with behavioral needs, and that this student needed to be served, or more than one student need to be served in a different facility other than RIGHT, out of respect or in response to his behavioral needs. Is this the kind of cost that that additional contract for the additional program? I think it was for kids with behavioral needs. Is this the kind of cost that we'll recover, or we won't be saddled with, so to speak, by hiring a social worker for RIGHT?
Correct. We estimated that there was possibly 2 or 3 students that we could have put in the RIGHT program this year had we had that continual daily support instead of on a scheduled basis. So yes, that's exactly what we're saying would happen.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question.
Go for it.
Jean, I was looking at the budget and my Mental Health Matters with the foundation. Does some of the money goes to offset some of these costs that we get?
So the money for the foundation helps support our social workers in materials and supplies and helping support our homeless population that has been growing. In addition, materials and supplies for our mental health clinicians. It also provides some professional development, and we also utilized it for some her clinic expenditures.
Okay.
So we don't ask for positions to be covered with that money, just support.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or discussions for Jean? All right. Thank you so much, Jean. We really appreciate
Sure.
you being here.
Sure.
Oh, you're on the next part too. All right. Oh, maybe not. Ms. Danielle Yoder and Mr. Randy Brown, along with representatives from Crabtree, Verbaugh, and Associates, will now join us for an update on the attendance boundary and facilities analysis. Welcome and thank you for being here tonight, gentlemen.
So I'll, excuse me, as I get the presentation gathered up, I'll also share what we've done since our last discussion. And the largest part of what we've done is factored in and reviewed our latest projections from Decision Insight and compared those to those that Crabtree has prepared on their own. And what we have found in June when we met with you, we were concerned about one or two schools, and they did not seem comparable to the data from Crabtree, and so we're measuring those out. And we have come to determine what the differences were. There were a couple of developments that are no longer should no longer be considered, and they were not being considered by Crabtree. One of them being Pine Hall, which Ferguson Township has halted on, and some other factors that we will discuss with you tonight when we go through our PowerPoint. But we feel very confident as we can when we're looking at projections, because families in this district are very mobile, not only within the district, but also in and out of the district. And as Ms. Yoder can attest, sometimes our students don't land where we expect them to go, even with the best of projections. And so what we can state this evening is that what we have been experiencing is larger growth at Mount Nittany Elementary School, and that has led to, as you know, fifth graders being located in this building for the third year in a row. Upcoming. We will also admit that we had some higher than normal growth in Spring Creek Elementary School, and I believe that there are two reasons for that. One is that there has been, since our last projections that we really studied closely prior to the building of the Spring Creek Elementary School, there's been some low-income or workforce housing initiatives out there, not in large scale, but to some extent. I believe also, and board members, I'm sure you won't be surprised, but as I look at property transfers and the sale of property and purchase of property in that area specifically, those transfers are going for some homes on the more attractive side of things. They have the turnover there has not been of the larger homes. There's some of the smaller homes in the school district in the Hauserville and Lamont area. And I think that we're finding that by looking at our attendance and our enrollment, that more young families are purchasing those homes and then resulting in more students than we had expected. And that type of turnover is somewhat hard to measure when the population is going to turn over and then return with students for our school district. So those are two of the largest findings. Sorry. Trying to do two things at once, and it's not working out so well for me. But we've brought tonight, we have John Badia again and Fred Witham. Sorry about that. From Crabtree, and they have a presentation, which I'm trying to get called up here on my computer, and we'll have them speak. Thanks, John. So I will start the slideshow here. So, Dr. Witham, do you want to go ahead and?
Sure. We have been through the Decision Insight data with a tremendous amount of detail. And thank you for taking the time. We found some anomalies in the data. We thought for sure maybe it was us, because they are very sophisticated in what they do, but they had some misinput on their data. And when we got that straightened out, really everything kind of fell in line with the expectations. Feeling very comfortable with that data. We classified each of the elementary schools as of immediate concern, of potential concern, and of low concern. Difference is, immediate concern is you probably need to do something about this yesterday. Potential concern is that there is potential for growth evident, but not necessarily actionable at this point in time. So you should keep an eye on those elementary school attendance units and see where they continue to go over the next couple of years. And then low concern is enrollment growth is really not anticipated to challenge the capacity of the buildings. There's really only one school. You probably won't be too difficult to guess. It's Mount Nittany, where you're using 20 out of 18 classrooms. So 2 of them are beyond the building and are seated over here. And I'm not going to go through every graph, but let me tell you how to read these, and then you can look at them afterwards. Decision Insight provides you 2 enrollment projections. One is moderate, most kind of aggressive that they could see happening, and one is conservative, the one that is less aggressive. The yellow line between the 2 is the average of them. And we've been working off the average of those 2 as kind of the place where we want to look to set capacities of the buildings. The red line is the total number of seats in a building. And the other project that we did since we met last was we went through and remapped all of your buildings for next year's use. So we know where you moved your preschool classrooms and where special ed and ESL has shifted around, and that you might find some differences from previous reports. So we've included the maps for each building and how each individual class is being used. So the red line is the capacity of the building. Elementary schools schedule efficiently at about 90% of the total seats. You're never going to get 25 kids in every grade level all the way through. So you've got some up, there's some down, but 90% is that planning sweet spot. That's the dark blue line. You'll see 2 green lines on there, and the one lighter color green line is the capacity that you are expected to require in 5 years, and the darker green line is the capacity after 10 years. I want to tell you that beyond 5 years, the margin of error increases greatly. You should look at that dark green line as, really anything after 5 years is a potential trend, not really a solid planning number. But you can see in Mount Nittany, you're already short seats. The bar graph down at the bottom shows you how many seats you have vacant until you hit 90%. So currently you're in the negative numbers. By the time you get out to 2032, if these enrollment projections would hold, you would have 48 seats. Well, when you only have 18 classrooms, or 20 if you want to use the 20, you can figure you don't have any extra classrooms. It would be 2.8, whatever, 2.4 seats in each individual classroom left on average. So the takeaway is you're already out of space, and it doesn't look like there's anything that's going to happen that's going to come in and cause you to recoup any space during the length of the projections. The building map is there. Now, potential concerns, Spring Creek already came up. You can see that by both the light and the dark green line, it is below 90% of the capacity. So if these projections hold true and you hit the average of the 2, you're going to be below. The one thing that needs to be monitored here is if the purple line, which is a mathematically valid prediction of the future, if the purple line were to hold true, then you're not looking at requiring space 10% above the yellow line. You're looking at requiring 10% more space than the purple line. If that were the case, Spring Ridge is going to be, Spring Creek is going to be above its schedule capacity. Again, I don't think you want to make a decision now to add space and then find out later that you didn't need it, but you should probably continue to watch Spring Creek and see how well the rooms are filling. Spring Creek map. Then the other area actually involves the Trough Trees Rest, which we talked about. It's this big if sitting out there, but the big if has been there for a considerable amount of time, and it hasn't moved. And we've talked extensively about what the possibility of that is going to be, and it probably won't have a potential impact over the course of the next 5 to 8 years. Even if they started, it's still going to take time to build out that you're going to feel that pain. If that were to come true, you've got Grays Woods that has space. You have Park Forest, which is close to that 90% in both of the projections. And you also have Radio Park, which has space. The bottom line is what we're suggesting is that, and I'm not suggesting that you need to redistrict now, or that you may ever want to redistrict. That's got to be a board decision. That's a big decision to make. What we're telling you here is that if Trough Trees came on like gangbusters all of a sudden, your relief valve is all three of those schools. So you might say, phase 1 will have to go to Radio Park, phase 2 will have to go to, and that will buy you enough time to decide whether or not you want to make those changes permanent, or if you want to add a wing or consider another elementary school. Again, it's something to watch and monitor, but I don't think at this point in time there's anything calling for any kind of action on it. And then the low concern schools are Coral Street and Easterly Parkway and Ferguson. 3 of those schools, even though you're using, you have a lot of the classrooms assigned, you still have a lot of seats that are left in most of these schools, and you also have a full-size classroom being used as a learning support classroom that may only see 8 kids at a time. You might be able to move a learning support classroom into a small group room and then recapture a whole general classroom. So again, in all those, you definitely have space and then some wiggle room depending on what would occur in those attendance areas at that time. So that's it. That kind of builds on everything that we've talked about in great detail. We feel very comfortable with the third-party enrollment projections that they provided you and the heroic effort that the district has done to make sure that they had those projections in as timely manner as the company would allow, and making sure that they are accurate.
If I could just add a few footnotes. I already spoke about some of our Mount Nittany elementary issues and the Spring Creek. Also at Grays Woods, there has been a lot of growth out there of new residential housing, but what we have found is that a lot of that housing is being occupied by people without students. In fact, many of the housing units are being only occupied part of a year, and so that's helping our our school situation as far as room for students. In addition, in case any of you haven't heard, Half Moon Township continues to take efforts to slow growth because they are concerned about that, and they want to make sure that there are not developments with where the houses are much more closely related, and so that's why they are limiting to 1-acre lots and some of the sewage and public water actions that they're taking. For Radio Park, we do have several district-wide programs there. There are some special ed district-wide program, special ed programs servicing the entire district, as well as preschool the preschool was going to be there, but it's not going to be there. It's going to actually be in Grays Woods this coming year. I forgot about that. Coral Street is going to have a preschool program, and then also Hearts. And so those are decreasing their capacity a little bit, but still not a potential concern. Easterly, again, as we look at Easterly and the makeup of that community, it is a borough location. It has very little potential new residential development. Rental units from the university type housing are being turned over into family units, we're seeing. So there is some concerns there. However, as we talk further about a potential renovation addition at Mount Nittany L, we would like to discuss and explore the possibility of moving the multiple disability classroom out to Mount Nittany L. That would free up a full-size classroom and give Easterly some additional space. And I already talked about Pine Hall being canceled for Ferguson Township. So I think those are the main points that I wanted to make. Just to reiterate what is in the memo and to state it publicly, as far as a recommendation, the administration recommends a potential project, Mount Nittany L, to include construction of 6 regular education classrooms, 1 for each grade level K through 5, in addition to multiple small group instruction rooms, to relocate multiple disability classroom from Easterly Parkway, along with establishing a sensory classroom to support the autistic services already located at that school. Establish a separate gymnasium and cafeteria through construction, along with a possible new kitchen, depending on the location of the cafeteria, and establish a instrumental music classroom. These are things that we did in our last 3 elementary schools, and so we want to provide equity and be consistent. So we would, pending board discussion this evening, we would like to bring this back as an action item for you. And what that would allow is the administration to begin the process of developing a Plan-Con project. There is no Plan-Con money, but we still would recommend following that process. And a separate recommendation would be the appointment of Crabtree Rubaugh as the architect for that project. They have obviously vast experience with our buildings and the district administration, and this would allow the project to begin in a much more timely fashion, allowing us to move forward as quickly as possible. In the memo, we also did talk about a related project of a district-wide facility master plan. And just to make it very clear, that is a separate project. It's a separate timeline, obviously, but we want to get that started as well. And so we'll be sharing information with you at the August 21st board meeting about a recommendation there and what that potentially looks like. And if Gretchen may want to speak, Gretchen, Peter, and I have been talking through facilities planning on that project as well.
I guess I would just add that Peter and I have been talking with Randy for probably about a year now about the need to do the district-wide facility master plan, and that is fully happening, will be discussed at the 8/21 full board meeting, but that there's this imminent need at Mount Nittany L, and so that's happening, but the district-wide facility master plan is also happening simultaneously, and of course in that will be the addressing of Park Forest Middle School. So just to clarify for the community and for all the board members, that is not taking second place or anything like that, less priority. That's not the case at all. It's that with a building that big, you want to do your district-wide facility master plan before you start that project. But this need at Mount Nittany L has been known for quite some time. So hopefully that fills in some of the gap. But we're on it.
Thanks, Gretchen.
Any other questions or discussion for Randy? Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
Thanks. Couple questions. wrong way. With Radio Park, it says 20 out of 20 classrooms, but I thought there were 24 there.
The others are occupied by the district level programs, the special education.
Okay, so
those types of
those
things.
were not included when you did, that, I guess that was the other way to phrase
We're
the question.
excluding those.
Okay.
We're excluding those from the total capacity because right now they're not available for a K-5 classroom.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's exactly, because I remember the whole discussion about whether to go 4D or 3D.
Absolutely.
And that's why I was wondering about it.
You're absolutely right, and that's, Dr. Witham spoke of that and in his discussion, and that's why we've adjusted some of our capacity numbers to reflect those district-wide or preschool rooms, that type of thing, throughout the different buildings.
Okay. And then the other thing with regard to the recommendation, and I apologize for this, and it's not meant in a personal way. However, we have done the high school project, 3 elementary projects, and now once again we're being told that in order to do things quickly and in a timely way, we should go forward with appointing an architect instead of choosing one. We authorized Crabtree to do the schematic part for the high school almost exactly 11 years ago. And at the time, because I'm the only one who was on the board at that time, our facilities CAC had come forward with 2 recommendations, 2 different firms. And we had a board meeting. It was able to be private, I think, because it dealt with facilities or something, at which we were strongly encouraged to go with Crabtree, and the board gave unanimous approval for that. But the CAC had actually brought forward 2 different names. So it wasn't that everything was on board that way. And we then, after doing the schematic, just authorized. We did not go out to another bid in terms of doing the high school planning. And then so that was 11 years ago. When we looked into doing the elementary schools, part of what we were told, there was some funding on the table that we needed to move quickly. And so again, we did not do any bidding at all. And to me, the idea of going with another project, even a fairly small one, without even looking at other firms is just, and again, respectfully, we've got good schools, I understand that, but that's a real concern I have in terms of the efficiency of how we show the community that we're really looking carefully at how we spend our monies on these projects.
Can I just make one clarifying comment? You used the term bidding. We would not bid.
Right.
We would do a request for proposal, and services do not need to be accepted for the low bid. Just to make sure that everyone
Yeah,
completely
no, thank you for the
understands.
clarification.
That even if we did a process, it may not end up being the low cost. Cost would be a factor, I would assume, in a matrix, but it would not be the deciding factor.
So the fact that we've worked with Crabtree and they know us already could be something in their favor, even if it wasn't the absolute lowest.
Correct.
Which I'm fine with. I'm absolutely fine with, because it may be non-monetary, but there's absolutely a benefit to that. But I did want to point out that this is another time that we're being recommended to do this, and I'm concerned about it.
Gretchen?
I had 2 questions that are, I think, pretty simple, but I just think that it would be a good idea for us to talk about it in a public meeting so that the community understands where this is coming from. One is, can you just, succinctly, I mean, we don't need to be here for an hour, but sort of the backstory behind Toftrees and whether this is going to happen or not. And I know it's been talked about for a long time, but, that seemed like a pivotal point in your presentation, and just maybe a little bit more background. The second one is the Mount Nittany Elementary need. I mean, we've all been told that for a while, but I'm still unclear, where is that extra housing occurring, or where has it occurred? So just sort of the backstory behind those 2 points of your presentation would be helpful.
Sure. So Toftrees, it's been a development that has been in the planning for a number of years. They have started working on the medical facility for Mount Nittany Medical Center and some other commercial development. I spoke to someone in their finance area back in the spring, and he said that although their initial plans had houses being built much sooner, there's still, he assured me that he did not think that our enrollment for K-12 students, or K-5 especially, would be impacted in a meaningful way within the next 5 years because of the types of progress that they're expecting. That could change. I couldn't hold him to that, obviously, but because development like that, land development like that can vary. But he was expecting, as I told him, we were looking at if we're looking at a strong 5-year lens, he just didn't think that it would be influential in our enrollment at that point, in that time frame.
That development's happening more slowly
More
than-
slowly.
Okay.
That's correct, yes. Thank you for paraphrasing.
Yep.
Mount Nittany L, where are the students coming from? Well, there's the development off 45 that I can't remember what the name of is, but it's across from Willowbrook, that continues to bring students there. And there's some other development around Boalsburg that just continues to provide a lot of students. And I'm not sure exactly beyond that where they all are coming from, but there's just been a large amount of students coming there. And like we said, the year 2021 school year, we had no empty classrooms, and there were in Mount Nittany L, and there were 3 rooms in this building that were being used by students. So they were essentially 3 classrooms short. Last school year, 2021, so that would have been 2021. In 21-22, they had, I believe, Danielle, can you help? I'm getting lost with my years.
So in 21-22, there were still 3 fifth-grade classrooms here. This past year, we were able to take one of the fifth-grade classrooms back because, if you remember, we had
Right.
closed 3 of the large spaces, allowing Karen Stiers is who went back. It opened up the boardroom for the 22-23 school year, but we still have the 2 fifth-grade
That are
were
good.
here last year and are proposed to be here again this year.
So that would mean that by the 24-25 school year, this building would not have 5th grade anymore.
25-26.
25-26.
It would be, 23-24 would be a year of planning and potentially bidding, planning and design, hopefully bidding in late summer or early fall next year, which is 24. And then 24-25 would be building. So 25-26 would be the year that there would be no students back in this building.
Thank you.
So, on the topic of the dates, because that's part of my question, if we look at the graph for Mount Nittany Elementary, we all think in terms of school years, because who doesn't live their life by an academic calendar? But at the bottom, it lists just a single year, so I'm just trying to understand these projected open spaces and exactly when, and specifically, right, because it's going to take a year to plan, and then it's going to take a year to build, when we get the space to come online that we know we need yesterday, we're just about to be out of the bubble. And then Mount Nittany doesn't look to be that much worse than Spring Creek or Park Forest Elementary for that case. So I just want to try to understand that. So the year 2026, where it says we might have 2 empty seats, understandably, it's a projection. Is that 26, 27, or is that 25, 26?
Yeah, for some reason, Decision Insight, I think it's because they're grounded in another state, they count their school year, these years as the first year of a school year. So it's 23, it's the 23-24 school year.
Okay. So that's what we're in right now. So the 23 is our planning year. The 24 is our building year. So then the 25 would be 25, 26, when it looks like we'd still be missing an entire classroom. I guess I just want to emphasize to the community that we are at least going to get this done when we still really need it. as opposed to when the bubble has gone through already and we have extra space.
Go ahead.
The other thing that I was going to say is even if we go all the way out and the maximum number of open seats is 48, if you have 18 classrooms, if you put on another 6 and have 24 classrooms, those 48 seats are not empty spaces for changes in programs, and they're not vacant classrooms. They're going to be 3 seats in this room, 3 seats in this room, 3 seats in this room. And I think the other issue has been your special programs, your support programs have been eating into your capacity, and you have no room to deliver ESL, more ESL at that building, or more autistic support at that building, and those kinds of things. So that's keeping that 48 at the end. You may have peaked in your enrollment, but you over-peaked in your use, and you're not backing off that much. Right.
Okay.
That's helpful.
So I guess as a follow-up to that, if you don't mind. Oh, totally. Because again, I want to make sure we're identifying the needs under your potential concerns, like Let's Watch. Again, if you look at Spring Creek Elementary and Park Forest Elementary, their numbers of these empty seats are very similar to Mount Nittany's numbers by the end of the period. I understand years 5 to 10 is really hard to predict. But what I thought I might have just heard from you, and I don't know if this is true, maybe I just am misinterpreting, is that, like, are we better able, and maybe this is a better question for you, Randy, are we better able to meet the needs of our special populations in, like, the Spring Creek and the Park Forest Elementary? Like, do those schools have space for the speech therapists and the autism room and whatever, and Mount Nittany doesn't have space for those?
So
And that's why we're less concerned about the same numbers in a different building?
So Mount Nittany is out of space.
That is clear.
All total space.
Okay.
All total space. They haven't had a conference room to have a meeting with parents and students and teachers for 3 years. So they are, and they're looking, if they have a dean this year, that dean will have to probably use an office in this building and not in that building. So,
Sure.
Comparing to Spring Creek is really close to that same level, but not there yet. And they have some potential ways that, again, Mrs. Yoder and I have identified that we can help them. Park Forest, I'm not as familiar with, but they haven't been screaming as loudly. That doesn't mean that there's not issues there, that I'm just not aware of them. But the other advantage Easterly Parkway is very close to being a classroom short for this coming school year. And but if we move an MDS out, and if we do some other things, they have some shortfalls too. And I'm sure that if some teachers are listening, they're probably screaming at me through their television set. But Mount Nittany has the clearest, largest problem. And we have others, but if we do an addition at Mount Nittany, there are sections of Spring Creek that could be I'm not going to use the terrible word of redistricting, but we could use the term swing zone. And that has negative connotations for some people and less for others. But there are sections of Spring Creek attendance area that could then shift to Mount Nittany potentially to help with that. The same as if there is growth at Easterly Parkway as an example. The same thing with Park Forest. There is some potential maybe between the Grays Woods and Radio Park community. We all want our kids to go, the students in our communities to go to the schools to which they were assigned to whenever someone bought their house, built their house, whatever. That doesn't always happen, but we're trying to do what we can. But given the information we have today and the experience we've lived through for the last 3 years, we do not believe that an addition at Mount Nittany I shouldn't say it in the negative. We believe it's in the best interest of our student population.
Thanks. I mean, it's clear that Mount Nittany, just to be clear on my comments, it's clear that Mount Nittany needs the space.
no.
I want to make sure we're not missing a need in another school.
I understood that, and
So,
and I'm not saying that there aren't needs there. They're not as strong. And again, with Mount Nittany's population, with the Autistic Support Center, and with even if they weren't an ESL center, they still have a very high ESL population. And with that, the number of additional breakout spaces is their breakout spaces are probably I know they are much larger in quantity than Easterly Parkway, but they're still being utilized because of all of the needs there as well.
Great. Thanks.
Dr. Bader.
Yeah, no problem. I think of it like the little puzzles you get as a kid, sometimes at a restaurant, and there's the little sliders that you slide from place to place, and you're trying to make that picture come together. And so I appreciate that you've looked at trying to relieve in a couple different spots, like by moving, the multi-disabled room out of Easterly, that would free up space there. We're trying to create space adjacent to schools that look like they are questionable or concerning. Trying to put the preschools and other things in appropriate places to also free up space. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And knowing that Spring Creek is so close and that those are adjacent attendance zones makes a lot of sense. My only really simple question was, we built Mount Nittany L before we had a fifth special, and you mentioned the instrumental room. I'm assuming you're also taking into account the need for the fifth special room in that space as well.
They have the capacity for one.
Okay.
So, yes.
Just double, triple checking.
Nope,
and
you're
that,
fine.
And I would imagine as the design process would go on, needs like for a dean or other things would be factored into, however we design the space.
And thank you for bringing up the fifth special, because that should have been in the memo, because that's affecting everybody's capacity.
Every elementary building,
Because
certain buildings.
when we talk about capacity, we don't talk about the art room, the library, and the music room. Well, now we shouldn't be talking about the STEM room as well.
Yeah, because in several buildings, we've lost a classroom to that STEM room.
Right, exactly.
Ms. Sidney.
So another question is about the district-wide facility master plan. And a concern I have is that it's been, I think, decades since there was a very broad, comprehensive look at some of the potential threats, some of the opportunities. We've had charter schools developed since the last time that we took, as a community, a very deep look at things like grade configuration and all of that. And I'm not saying I want them to change. I'm saying that it may be time to look at that again. And if so, I'm wondering about moving ahead with this project before doing something like that, which it sounds like we're scheduled to start in September. And that would also, the other piece in there is preschool, which whether we like it or not, is going to be coming. It's coming to every single, and why like it or not, I mean in terms of school capacity, not in terms of whether we think it's a good idea. But we don't have room. When we expanded to all-day kindergarten, there was room. There's not room to add preschool, comprehensive preschool to everything.
Not in every school, that's correct.
Right. So again, I think it's very good that we're finally working on the district-wide master plan, but I think that we should not make big changes until we do that plan. And the follow-up to that is, can you talk a little about trailers as a relief valve for overcrowding? Or whatever the current term for such outside buildings is.
Modular classroom?
Thank you.
Well, I don't have a lot of experience, because the only time modulars were added in this district were during the construction and renovations at the high school, and then used at Coral Street. But what I can tell you is that my experience does remind me that it takes about 6 months or more, once you determine you want one, to get it installed. And that's not a product delay, that's working it all through with getting the product, getting it delivered, and getting all of the setup with code. And we know, and for some of you, you're going to remember that there were code issues getting them installed at the high school as well, even though we thought we had it all worked out. And if we were to do modulars at Mount Nittany L, we'd be doing multiple. And they are not without a cost either. And I've been working with folks in the district to consider modulars for some of our other sites where we're feeling some crunch, but not the same level of crunch as Mount Nittany. And thank goodness they were here, because then we could serve as a relief valve. Although I'm sure that some people don't think it's a great relief, but it's been exciting to have the kids here. It really has. But so that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, it can be a lot of money, and I don't think that the administration recommends that in this case, given what our projections are, what our experience has been, and I understand your comment about that this project, Mount Nittany project, could be, not necessarily the right step before a complete district-wide facility master plan, but then we could be living another couple of years. And with it only being one of 8 elementary schools, I'm not sure that we're ready to take on massive changes at the elementary level to be a benefit of having the whole master plan. So you didn't necessarily ask for all of that, but I...
No, that's exactly, that's why I was saying the modular piece.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would also wonder with climate change that the effectiveness and the operations of modulars are going to become more and more difficult in terms of heating and cooling as we see, changes in our environment. We've already seen impacts on our schools with moisture issues and other things, and I would imagine modulars are even harder to kind of control those situations for.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to say. Mm-hmm.
And for our mobility challenge students too.
And they were out at Radio Park, they just stayed forever, I think, right? Didn't there used to be some outside Radio Park that were
Maybe.
being used for something?
Maybe. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
Any other questions for Randy?
And I have Mike and Danielle and others have been greatly assisting all of this. We appreciate them and appreciate John and Fred coming again tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, and Jeff Straub, we forgot to mention, he's online. He is virtually
Hi, Jeff.
participating. Jeff, did you have any comments or anything? Jeff will be attending on the 21st with John, right?
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, everybody. No comments. Great to see everybody again.
Thank you for being here virtually.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Randy.
Randy.
So thank you. Mr. Brown will remain to provide an update on the power purchase agreement. Take a minute if you need it.
Now, it'll only take a minute. There really is not a whole lot to update. When we put the agenda together, we thought that we might have more. Unfortunately, it is just continuing to be a very long process. What we did learn late last week is that the delay on getting the comments back from the legal team's review is not because of massive misunderstanding or concerns or questions. It was just related to scheduling and the company having the time to actually review and respond. So we are expecting comments back this week, and in the hopes that we will have something for the August 21st meeting. Did I miss anything, Gretchen?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the update, Randy.
Sure.
All right. In that case, we will continue with our policy work. Ms. Linda Pierce will be at the table to provide an overview of several policy updates. Only 6 tonight.
Yeah, wait until after the next PDC meeting.
Should we just go in order?
We can just go in order. So, oh, here we go. That's why I couldn't find it. The first one is policy 123.2, concussion management. It goes hand in hand with 123.3, sudden cardiac arrest. These are policies that are based on law, not a whole lot we've done to them as the Policy Development Committee pretty much accepted them as is.
Questions?
Anybody
or-
have any questions?
Dr. Anderson, go ahead.
It's not exactly related to the policy, but since we talked about it a little bit at the meeting, and it's been in the news because of young athletes having sudden cardiac arrest, could you share, either you or Mr. Johnson, sort of where we have the external defibrillators? Like who has access to those? Like where are they on the campuses? Because it was useful information, and I don't remember the details, so I'm going to let you guys do it.
They are not locked. They're open to anybody who knows where they are. So that's always the question. Where is the AED? Jean Canals, I don't know if she's still on or not.
She's not.
Okay. We are working together on an AED training program for next year for employees. And that will include letting everybody know where to look for an AED.
Thank you.
Sure.
So we actually had a student last year who proposed to administration for an extra because there wasn't one on the 4th floor of the high school, I think I want to say. And we managed to purchase one. I think we're trying to have one on each floor of the high school. There's one over in the North Gym as well. And so as we provide training for teachers and staff, there's also one in the nurse's office as well. So we try to get them wherever students may need.
Well, that's why we asked, being that athletics is a known risk factor, so Komodo cordalis that has occurred in the news recently. And so we knew there was one at the North Gym, which would be applicable to students on the North Field. I would assume that there's one in Memorial Field. But the one issue is the South Track and Community Field. So we had asked a little bit whether there was consideration through athletics, whether do the trainers have a portable one? Is there one? Because the fields are pretty big and literally seconds matter. So if you've got to run from Community Field all the way up to the high school building and back with an AED, that's not going to be as successful as highly accessible ones.
I know where a few of them are.
Okay, cool.
So we have a couple in the north building, back by the trainer's room, and out in the lobby by both gyms. We have one just inside of Delta facing the north field.
Okay.
We also just put one in the fitness center as well, so
Smart.
a little closer. There's not one up at Community Field, but there is one there at the fitness center. You get to pretty quickly. And there's also one at the South Track we keep in the concession area.
So could we put one in the new Public Works building that would be accessible on Community Field?
We could certainly do that, yes.
That would be
Well,
a nice consideration.
We'd want one there for the employees, too.
Absolutely, for sure. All right, thanks. That's really helpful, Mike.
Thank you.
That actually was my question, because we're talking about it with athletics. It is important, but we also have adults who are at higher risk than kids anyway. So is there a plan or goal to get them out to the other schools other than high schools?
Each school
School
has
has
at
one?
least one.
Okay.
I can ask Jean, I'm sure Jean's got a list. I can obtain that and get it to you.
Okay. I mean, I don't need the list. I
Okay.
was just wondering because we were talking about the high school.
All right, anything else on 123.2 or 123.3? I think I got those numbers right.
Okay, so we're ready to go forward to action?
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have 209.2, which is diabetes management. again, something else that not only is it a good idea to have, but that we are required to have.
Any questions or comments on this policy? This went through a lot of discussion in the policy committee.
Yeah, Jean was really helpful.
Yeah. All right. Should be good to move that one on for action then, too.
Sounds good. Next one is 233, which is suspension and expulsion.
And this is bounced back and forth. I think we had a read through at the full board table and came back to policy committee. And there was some, just not so much editing within sections, but a lot of reorganization of sections, trying to make things really clear for the public on the different kinds of categories of both suspensions and expulsions, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, durations of different things. So after a lot of wonderful work by administrators, we felt like it really came to a place to be a lot more digestible for those not in the know.
Are there any questions or discussion on this policy? All right, we can
All
take
right.
that one for action. Thanks for all the work. I know there was a lot of work on that one.
Oh, thank you. And then we have 718, which is service animals. Trying to be more definitive as far as reflecting the ADA in what is a service animal.
Yeah, Linda did the suggestion by PSBA was really poor and actually was blatantly incorrect in some areas. So we
Very
did a lot of work
confusing.
on this because they actually said things like you can require information from people about their service animal, which is not accurate. So, yeah, and we did 2 categories of this as well to try and clarify between when a student or an individual that's in school regularly every day would have a service animal versus, understandably, if someone's coming to a performance or a parent's here for another reason, you know, that those are expected immediate entry, granted entry as long as they meet the expected, anticipated setup. I don't even want to use the word requirements because it's more complicated than that.
Any questions or comments on the service animal in school policy revisions?
And yes, a miniature horse really is a service animal according to ADA.
I know. I want a picture of the first one that comes in.
I want to meet it.
It's not very often. I mean, I would pick a Great Dane over a miniature horse, but if you need that kind of size for stability support, I mean, that's usually what they're for.
All right.
And the last one, 823, is also required by law. We will also, Jean is also working on a program for this coming year. We'll be obtaining the naloxone as far as training people and communicating to people when and who can administer. Anybody really can, but a lot of people are uncomfortable administering anything, so training helps you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I think there's new legislation that will make it over the counter and so that anyone can administer it. So it's nice because when we discussed the SRO things, we talked about our SROs carrying naloxone, but at that time, just within the last year, no one else did. So it's really great that we've now flipped around and now it'll be easily accessible and it'll be in our buildings if needed. Hopefully never, but if needed.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's, I know there's been a lot of training you've had to arrange and organize, but I really do appreciate you tackling this one as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right. Any other last thoughts on policies? We march forward. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pierce. Next on the agenda is an update on several board reports. Dan, do you have an update of CIU?
As a matter of fact, yes. The Intermediate Unit Board met last Thursday, and probably among you board meetings I've attended, probably among the more productive board meetings. and primarily in relation to the new facility that's being planned for an old junior high school in Phillipsburg, Osceola School District, which is being basically renovated, and it will serve as the basis for a new administrative and training facility for the intermediate unit. There are a number of different actions that were approved by the board at that meeting. One was the approval and the acceptance of a final floor plan, which was provided by our consulting architects. Another one was recommending a request for proposal for demolition work for the new property. And among the things they're going to have to do is move the stands out of the gymnasium portion of the old middle school. They also requested, the administration requested that we create a request for proposal for an electrical contractor to provide service to the property itself as they begin their work on the property. There was the appointment of the agreement to essentially engage a construction management service, Fiduvia, to help oversee the actual work of the contractors. Once we put this project out to bid and we get started with construction, we need someone who's going to help oversee that process. And so this particular construction management company comes highly recommended by other intermediate units as well as school districts. And we also reviewed the recommendation for financing presented by our business manager, John Rice, which would provide between $1.5 and $2.5 million to start to be able to support the construction of this facility. So there was a lot of heavy lifting that occurred during the meeting, and smaller projects and such that were reviewed as well. But these were the big issues that were presented.
There was also a reorganization, right?
Oh, that's right, the board reorganization. That was an interesting experience too. We have a new president. Jeff Johnston was basically nominated and then approved to serve as the new president, and Jeff Wall will then serve as vice president. And then Dr. Eder will also continue to serve as a solicitor. And there are a number of other appointments. Haley Hickman as the board secretary, a number of other appointments that took place. Thank you for the reminder.
All right, thank you so much. Dr. Bader, is there any report for the SCASD Ed Foundation?
Yeah, we had a meeting last week. It was the monthly board meeting for the foundation, which was pretty simple. And then they held strategic planning for the year. So touched on some different subjects, a lot of brainstorming about, furthering connections with alumni, some potential growth in who receives the publication that's put out by the foundation, how to best optimize the use of that printing and mailing and things like that. A little bit of discussion over some priorities in terms of some of the funds that they allocate and which ones to push in the next upcoming year. So often that kind of shuffles a little bit, whether they're pushing for to support for the Student Opportunities Fund or the Mental Health Fund or different things. So yeah, just mostly a lot of brainstorming, and it was a good productive meeting, and they will not meet again until September.
Carlene, and
question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Did you get, and could we get copies of the year-end financial?
The year-end wasn't presented, and I believe that Paul Olivet is anticipating coming to the board in the fall for an update. I seem to recall, Randy, that was something that was mentioned. So that's why I thought it was October. Yeah.
Dr. Crevecoeur, is there any report for the CTC Local Advisory Committee?
No, we haven't met yet.
Or CAC Athletics?
No, we haven't met yet.
All right, thank you so much. Gretchen, is there any update on CAC facilities?
Mike is gone. I was not able to attend that meeting, so I'm actually not sure. I'm sorry.
Okay, we can loop it in next time if there's anything to report. CAC Finance, Deb and Laurel?
The next meeting is going to be in September, tentatively September 15th.
Okay, I'll probably ask again in August.
Next meeting in September.
Amy and Dan, School Health and Safety?
That'll be September.
All right, and as for me, technology has not met, so I have nothing to report. All right, looking ahead to future meetings, we have on August 15th, 2023, a Policy Development Committee at 1:30 here in Panorama Village Administration Center in the boardroom. On August 21st, we'll have a Committee of the Whole regular board meeting at 7 p.m. here in the boardroom at Panorama Village. On September 11th, we'll have a Committee of the Whole regular board meeting at 7 p.m. Here in the boardroom at Panorama Village. And then 1 week later, on September 18th, we are planning an additional Committee of the Whole regular board meeting here in the boardroom at 7 p.m.
And Jackie, if I can just remind policy committee members that you should have already received in advance of our usual advance, copies of some of the policies that we'll be evaluating. And if you can make sure to get feedback to Jeannie as soon as you can about whether they need additional discussion, because then we've layered on the discussion of policy regarding surveys. So we've got a pretty extensive agenda, and so we've got to really make sure we're prepared and communicate well in advance so we can optimize our time. Thanks.
Jackie?
Yes.
Question. We had these really nice calendars at our seats, and they're gorgeous, and I'm wondering where they're available for other people.
Do you know?
You know?
We got them from
Megan Shaper?
Yeah.
Yeah, so every year there's a, just a little background, like the students, is it second grade? Like there's a particular grade where they have a competition to draw food items. I'm not sure, but I'd be happy to reach out to
Yeah, I'd not
Megan
seen
and
one
ask her.
before that I remembered. It's gorgeous. So thanks to whoever put them in.
Yeah.
Which I guess is you, so.
I'll reach out to Megan.
Thanks.
All right. I would now like to call for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Executive session.
the executive session.
To executive session. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. All right. Thank you for coming, everyone.
You're watching CNET, Center County's Government and Educational Access Network.